Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan and today we are going to be talking about some of my book recommendations. A lot of you asked on one of my previous videos what kind of books I recommend, since I guess I seem to be so picky, which I am. So today I'm going to give you guys a few books that I actually enjoy because, you know, positivity. Now these books span different genres, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the books and some of their, you know, qualities, and then talk a little bit about what kind of category they fit into, because some of them are a little bit more fun and others are a little bit more intellectual. So we're gonna have a range today, and yeah, so hopefully you'll find something that you may enjoy that you didn't know about. But yeah, I think that's everything. So let's dive in. Alright, so I'm gonna start out with some fun books first. These are mostly YA books. I think they're all YA books, and so these are a little bit more just for entertainment, but they're really good. I thoroughly enjoyed them, and so I'll talk a little bit about those. So the first book that I have on this list is The Knife of Never Letting Go, and I lent it to someone and they never gave it back, so this is the sequel, The Ask and the Answer. This book series is super fun. It follows Todd and Viola, a couple teenagers. It is YA, and it is a kind of science fantasy book. It's basically set in the future, on a different planet because the world became overpopulated and we basically destroyed ourselves, which is the direction that we're heading in. So humans left the Earth, or some humans did, and they arrived on a habitable planet, but basically there's a kind of virus on this planet that means that all men can hear, like, the thoughts of everyone else. So animals, women, other men, which leads to a very interesting story. And let me see if I can find an example. The way that they set it up, the reading thoughts, is very interesting. So the font is kind of different. And it kind of reflects the way that people are thinking. So it's a very interesting concept. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's kind of an adventure novel set in the science fantasy world. I feel like I'm not doing a great job of setting up the world, but the story is great. It follows Todd and Viola as they are trying to find sanctuary, basically, and reach out to the other humans that are coming. This book series is also one of the few book series that has actually made me cry, because I don't really cry in books very often, but I sobbed when something happened in the first book in this series, so that's also good to know. It's not a sad book, but something sad happens, so emotions are had with this book. It also, while being fun, deals with a lot of topics that are actually really relevant, so that's always nice. I look for that in entertaining books as well. I do want them to be entertaining, but I also want them to have, you know, some like hints of theme and, you know, little messages sprinkled without. Sprinkled within? Little messages sprinkled within, throughout. That's what I was thinking of. Anyway, so this does have that. It has really interesting characters, it is a fun world, and it was super well done, so I really enjoyed this. So the next book on the list is Rook. This is another super fun book. It is definitely YA, and this one, I know what I just said, but doesn't really have a strong message. It's just a lot of fun all the way throughout. It's kind of a mixture between this action novel mixed with like a historical romance. It's not a historical fiction, it's just set in like Paris, that's kind of in the past and the future. The world basically has destroyed itself, wow, common theme, and rebuilt itself, but it's kind of gone back when it rebuilt itself. So yeah, so it's set in the future, but it's really set in the past in Paris. It is a really interesting society. The action is super fun. The romance is super fun. I was super impressed with how energetic this book is, and you just fly through it. It's such a good fun read. So if you're looking for something deep and meaningful, this is certainly not it. But if you're looking for a little like fun book to get you through something, this is definitely for you. It's a lot of fun. Also, I will point out that this book has a love triangle, but I wasn't too mad at it in this case. I thought that they did a fair job of making the love triangle somewhat enjoyable, so props to that. And yeah, I was a huge fan of the settings and most of the characters. Would recommend. obviously if I'm doing a recommend video, I would recommend it. The next and final book in this category is Blood Red Road, which is maybe my favorite book ever. I love this book so much. It is super fun. It's a great action adventure story. Why are there so many noises? I love this book so much. It's in one of my favorite genres, which is the adventure genre. I think it's technically classified as a dystopian, but that's baloney, because it is 100% an action adventure story. And then I think they tried to stretch it out into 3 books once the Hunger Games dystopia boom came out, because it kind of could be classified kind of as dystopian, so they did it, and then she wrote 2 other books that were completely unnecessary and stupid. So just read the first one. That's all you need to read, because it's the only good one. So basically it's set in the future after the world has destroyed itself. Ha ha ha. There is a theme. There is a thing that I like, apparently. But it's kind of this post-apocalyptic world, and it follows Saba, Lou, and Emmy and their father, who live on this lake that is slowly drying up. They have a really rough life, and then one day a red storm comes with some men, and the father dies, and the brother, Lou, is taken by a crazy drug lord for reasons. And then so Saba has to go on basically a mission to save her brother and get him back from this crazy drug lord guy. And Emmy tags along despite Saba not wanting her to, and they meet people along the way. It's a crazy story. There's a lot of really crazy awesome stuff that happens. Basically, the actual structure of the story is not that original, but the characters in this book are so fantastic, and there's a lot of original plot points that kind of come up and surprise you. And yeah, I don't know, this book surprised me throughout, which was amazing on the first read, and then I've read this book about 5 times, and that is 100% for the characters, because the characters in this book and the relationships in this book are so interesting and so well done. So I would highly recommend this to anyone who likes adventure novels. It has action, it has all of that, but also to people who want to see relationships and, you know, and character-driven story that is also full of action and adventure. So definitely a good YA read that is not super love triangle-y or anything like that. It's definitely 100% through and through. Not a dystopian. It is 100% an adventure story. I think the rest of the series tried to be dystopian and it was just a mess. So read the first book and hopefully you love it as much as I do. Alright, so that is that for the kind of fun category. I will definitely do more book recommendation videos in the future, so you know, we'll get to more of those. But for the next category that I'm going to be talking about, it's more genre fiction, but this is a little bit more adult. It deals with a little bit more adult themes, and it's definitely less like YA entertaining, and it deals with a little bit of the entertaining genre fantasy sci-fi stuff, but also the, you know, other stuff, politics and all that deliciousness. So the first one that I'm gonna grab and recommend is the Queen of the Tearling series. The first book is really good, the second book is mind-blowingly amazing, and the third book is kind of disappointing. It is a trilogy, that is it. There's only going to be 3 books. It's fine, I'm not mad about it. I will say that this is actually probably one of my favorite designs as far as the book goes. The cover, the spine, the actual pages, and the insides are all really beautiful. It has this super beautiful art. It is expensive, but if you actually like care about pretty stuff, this is a good one because it's really pretty. As far as the actual story, it follows Kelsey, who is the Queen of the Tearling, and she has just come of age and must now take her throne from her evil regent uncle. Now this sounds very cliche, and you're right, the setup is kind of cliche, but the characters and the way that it's done is really, really interesting. And the more you read, the more questions you're left with in the first book, and you're like, how are they gonna do this? How are they gonna pull this off? And it does a really good job of creating that sort of mystery. And in the second book, it's even better. It answers questions, but leaves you with more questions, and just creates this really interesting world that kind of blows your mind. The second book does something that I don't think I've ever seen done so well, or maybe even at all in a novel. It flips between two genres seamlessly, so it's both fantasy, because this is a fantasy novel, but it's both fantasy and like super dystopian sci-fi, and I'm not going to explain how because you're just going to need to figure that out for yourself, but it's really interesting and really well done. The third book, I will say, ends in a kind of disappointing way, but I'm still recommending it because the first two novels are amazing. The third one's fine. The ending's a little disappointing, but it's fine. But yeah, so even though, you know, I'm not obviously a huge fan of the ending, I thought the series was well worth reading despite that, because of the characters and the interesting way that she accomplished the thing in the second book. So definitely read that if you have a chance and are interested in the fantasy and sci-fi genres, as well as, you know, politics and all that good stuff. Next on the list, because I feel absolutely compelled to include it, is Dune by Frank Herbert. This book is definitely an icon, really, in the science fiction world, so if you haven't read it, you kind of have to. It's one of those books that has completely shaped a genre. So even though this book probably doesn't even rank in the top 3 of my favorite science fiction novels, it's definitely top 5, but it's just so iconic that you kind of have to read it. I think that for readers who are just getting into the genre, this might not be the best for you because it can be a bit slow at times, but the politics in this book are super interesting and the world building is like nothing I've ever seen before. So if you want something that's kind of epic, it's big, it encapsulates a lot, and the world is just so well thought out and interesting, then this is for you. I will say the first like 200 pages are really slow. It's a big book. It is massive. It has, let's see, like 800 pages in it, so it's not small, but it's very, very good if you can get past the first 200 pages, because I know that's where I struggled, because it just kind of throws you into the world. It's one of those books where it doesn't give you a lot of context at first. You just kind of have to figure it out for yourself as you read. So it definitely challenges you, and once you get past the first 200 pages, it's a lot smoother, but it's really well thought out. It tackles a lot of really interesting ideas, themes, and topics, and the world and characters are very interesting and unique. So yeah, definitely would recommend this if you love the science fiction genre. And last on my list in this section is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and I actually just lent this to my brother, which goes to show how much I love it and would recommend it. So that is why I'm holding up Golden Sun, which is the second book in the series, but Red Rising is also really good. I've done reviews on these book series, so I'm not going to dive into it too much. But it's a really, really fun series while being a little bit more mature than most YA, and that's because it's technically not YA, which I didn't know. I think while I was reviewing the trilogy, I thought it was YA. So I said that it was, but it's not. I seriously think that the second book is the best one in this series. I know a lot of people thought Morning Star, which is the third book, was. I disagree. I think the first one is really good, the second one is mind-blowingly amazing, and the third one is also just really good. But the whole series was super enjoyable for me, and I thought that they tackled a lot of really interesting topics and ideas as well. So I would recommend this, and if you want to see those reviews, I will leave the links to those down below. And so for the last kind of list that I'm going to be talking about today, I have 3 more books, and these are either historical fiction or non-fiction, memoir, that kind of thing. So let's dive into that. These will, you know, be a little bit more educational. We're slowly working from like entertaining, super entertaining, to like engaging your mind, but the ones that engage your mind are entertaining, that's why I'm recommending them, and the ones that are super entertaining also hopefully engage your mind. So we're getting it all today. So I'm going to start out with one that I actually just finished like a few days ago, and that is Unbroken by Lauren Hillenbrand. And this was actually turned into a movie that was directed by Angelina Jolie, which was actually a really good movie and I thoroughly enjoyed, and is why I picked up the novel. Usually I try to do it the opposite way around, but I actually didn't know it was a novel before I watched the movie. This novel is so well done. I'm not a huge fan of nonfiction books generally, but I thought that this was super engaging while being super informative and following such an interesting guy's life. This follows Louis Zamperini, who was an Olympian athlete in the 30s, and then when World War II hit, he joined the Air Force in the US Army, and things went sideways, and he should have died probably 10 times and managed to survive it all, which is incredible. And it deals with not only before the war, during the war, but also after the war, and kind of some of the side effects that he had to deal with, which is, you know, really interesting to read about. It really dives into a lot of detail. You can tell that Lauren Hillenbrand did an amazing job with how much she's researched this book. It's just, the index is just amazing. And yeah, it includes a lot of photos of Louis and some of the other people that he was with, and she does a great job of, yeah, really keeping it engaging while keeping it informative. So definitely recommend this novel to anyone who likes nonfiction, and even if you don't like nonfiction but like war stories, this is a good one. The next book on this list is something that I already recommended in a previous video, which I think was the underrated reads, which was a top 5 Wednesday. And this book is The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. This book follows Jeanette Walls' life. It is a memoir, and is one of those things where you're like, this doesn't seem like it's real, but it is. The movie just came out for it, which is why I feel compelled to recommend it yet again, because I don't want you guys to do what I did with Unbroken and, you know, watch the movie before you read the book, because I heard the movie wasn't that good, and the book is fantastic. It follows Jeanette's early life with her crazy family. It's one of those things, I don't really know how to explain it other than to say that she led a very unorthodox childhood, and her parents were, well, her dad was an alcoholic, and her childhood was riddled with a lot of experiences that childhoods should not be riddled with. So definitely read this if you're into memoirs or into interesting stories. I read this book when I was fairly young, so it definitely isn't hard to read as far as the actual vocabulary and the way that it's written, but it does deal with a lot of mature and intense topics, so go into this knowing that your emotions are going to be all over the place. It is a roller coaster, and it's crazy because you know while you're reading it that it's true, so go into it aware of all of that. But it is so good, so I definitely recommend it. And the last book on this list is something that I don't think I've seen anyone talk about on BookTube ever, but this book was recommended to me by my mother because I love ancient Greece and Rome and all of that good stuff. So this book is The Golden Mean, and it's by Annabelle Leon? One of those two. Basically, it is a historical fiction that follows Aristotle and his relationship with Alexander the Great and Philip of Macedon. If this doesn't sound interesting and sound super historical and boring, then you're wrong, because it is interesting and it is done super well. Basically, Aristotle at the beginning thinks that he's going to be succeeding Plato at the academy in Athens, but then Philip of Macedon, his childhood friend, calls up Aristotle and is like, you're gonna teach my son how to think. And Aristotle's like, okay, that sounds terrible. And then the son turns out to be Alexander, who will then become Alexander the Great. But this is Alexander in his childhood, and it's a very interesting relationship. It deals with a lot of politics, there's a lot of drama, it's a look at how women were treated also, and I don't know. I thought that this was really well done. I don't read a lot of historical fiction, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought that the writing was really beautiful and it was engaging, and the characters were just very rich and super well done. So I definitely recommend this, especially because it's not something that I think I've seen anywhere else. So would definitely recommend it. It's won a couple awards or been nominated for some really great things. Alrighty, so that concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed this little recommendations video. I am going to be posting something very soon next week that is more in the usual vein of my kind of discussion analysis videos. So look forward to that, but I just thought that since so many of you requested this, I would do a little video based on my recommendations. And let me know down below some of your thoughts on these books if you have read them or if you are going to read them. Also, if you guys have any video requests, I do see them, obviously, and I want to make content that both you enjoy watching and I enjoy making. So if you have any video requests, be sure to leave them down below, because I do see it and you know, sometimes I make videos based on those requests. So definitely leave that down below. I think that is everything. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Again, give this video a thumbs up, all that good stuff. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.